Good evening, everyone. This is Tony Lucero with Ghost Radio USA. I know we're starting a little bit late, but better late than ever. This is a show about all things paranormal, whether it be UFOs, ghosts, Sasquatch, or that hairy neighbor running down the street chasing after midgets somewhere down the riverbed, aka urban legends. Wow, it's been kind of a hot week over here in Southern California, and happy Mother's Day to everybody. I know there's a few minutes left in the day. Technically, it's still Mother's Day, so happy Mother's Day to all you mothers out there. Tonight's episode of Ghost Radio is brought to you by Llorona Martinez over in Los Angeles, as well as Sarah Marsh out in the Valley in Los Angeles. And this week is brought to you especially by Mario Moreno. He is one of our listeners out there in Santa Fe Springs and a personal friend of mine who made a generous contribution to help make this radio station grow, actually our show. And also we had an anonymous donor out in Kern County who contributed to our cause as well. So I just wanted to, before we started our show today, I wanted to apologize for last week. We didn't have a show because of technical difficulties. It was supposed to be our Cinco de Mayo show, talking about La Llorona and Chupacabra, amongst other things. And before we get started, a little business to take care of. Tonight's episode, like always, is brought to you by the Late Night Horror Film Festival, Downey, California's premier horror film festival. For more information, log on to LateNightHorrorFilmFest.com. Well, it's been, like I said, it's been a great Mother's Day weekend. Kind of hot and balmy out here in California. We had thunderstorms a couple days ago, and then all of a sudden we're in a heat wave. So what's next? Probably earthquake. Don't want to jinx anything. A little story I'd like to share with you guys tonight. Was at the Paramount swap meet over in Paramount, California with my girlfriend. We're taking the day off and just, going for a stroll, buying a bunch of stuff. And lo and behold, I came across probably the most bizarre thing to ever find at the swap meet. Somebody was selling caskets and funeral arrangements. If you guys don't believe me, it'll be posted on the website at ghostradiousa.weebly.com. I'll post that up after today's show so you can take a look at it, but wow. And yeah, amongst all things, caskets in the middle of a swap meet. Anyway, like I promised a couple weeks ago, we're going to be talking about La Llorona. La Llorona, or the Weeping Woman, is a Mexican folk legend. And here's the story. Legend has it that back in the 1500s, during the Spanish conquest, or when the conquistadors invaded Mexico from Spain and pretty much took over the country in a bloody and bunch of bloodshed. Excuse me, coffee hasn't kicked in yet. Anyway, Spanish conquistador fell in love with one of the local indigenous women, an Aztec woman by the name of Malinche. Now, the two got married, and she was converted to, just like the rest, to Catholicism, and she bore 2 children to him. Well, the Spanish conquistador was actually, we say he was wealthy, adventurous, landowner, and, amongst other things, a womanizer. Having learned that her husband was, cheating on her, seeing other women and such, and he seen nothing wrong with it, she, of course, became enraged. And, over the years, as their young children grew up, in age, they weren't that old, but, as they grew in age, their father paid more attention to them than her, so there's a bit of jealousy there. So one day she was walking along the river with them, with the 2 children, and she just snapped at the whole notion that her husband was cheating, and in a fit of rage and jealousy and temporary insanity, she grabbed her 2 children and tossed them in the river. She finally snapped out of it and realized what she had done. she ran down, downstream, with the river current, trying to save her children, but it was already too late. They drowned. And as she was running, she tripped on a rock and slipped and fell, busted her head, and that was it. She died. Well, as a result of her heinous crime, the Catholic Church did not want to bury her in a Catholic cemetery. They wanted nothing to do with her. So they buried her out by the river. A year later, on a full moon night, which so happened to be the moon that was up, the day she, allegedly drowned her children, La Llorona's spirit arose. And to this very day, down in Mexico, amongst other bordering states, including Texas, California, New Mexico, and the legends even spread, up and outwards then, it is said that a woman in white had been seen walking around alongside the river crying, mis hijos, my children, my children. And most people seeing a woman in distress will stop and try to lend a hand and console her. So as they would approach her, she would toss them in the river and drown them. Now, when I was a little kid, first of all, I was born in a multicultural household, being half Mexican, half white, just to simplify things. Was always, teased and taunted by my mom, saying if I don't be good, La Llorona's going to come. La Llorona's going to come, because she comes by and she's looking for her children, and she snatches them up by their feet and tosses them in the river. So I was petrified of that story. Okay, getting back, I know there's a little bit of a tangent, but getting back to that story, to this day, it is told that La Llorona wanders the rivers in search of her children, and goes and snatches up children that are within reach, kind of puts them in a spell, and tosses them in the river and kills them, or she'll smother them in their sleep, as some of the legends say, etc., etc. Here in Southern California, obviously, there is a large Hispanic population, primarily, Mexican descent. And like any culture, legends will always be passed down from generation to generation. Some of the most recent sightings here in Southern California, allegedly, of La Llorona have taken place over in Santa Ana, California, just on the outskirts, along the Santa Ana River, up into Tustin, going up into Trabuco Canyon and such. Many hikers or walkers and joggers, or people just taking a midnight stroll, have claimed to have seen La Llorona. My own cousin, as a matter of fact, a couple of weeks ago, sent me an email stating that when she was a kid, she actually seen her too, and they're from Orange County. So hey, being a paranormal investigator who's been out of the game for a while, I could bring you guys some more stories, and of course, stay on top of things with research and such. Biggest dreams in this realm is to actually see if I can find evidence of La Llorona. I know a lot of you guys out there who are paranormal investigators have aspired to do the same thing, so one of these days I will get to investigate La Llorona. So there you have it, La Llorona, the weeping woman, just kind of the legend in a nutshell. Now, if any of you have any La Llorona stories you'd like to share, or anything unusual, strange, cryptozoology, what I mean by cryptozoology are mythical creatures such as Bigfoot, etc., or if you have an urban legend to share, give us a call. Lines are open, 562-712-3812. We're going to commercial break. When we come back, I'm going to talk a little bit about that blood-sucking little reptilian, Chupacabra, on Ghost Radio USA. Alright, you are listening to Ghost Radio USA. I'm Tony Lucero, and we're back from commercial. Talking about La Llorona, now moving on to that infamous reptilian little bloodsucker that stemmed from Mexico and Latin American countries. That's right, chupacabra. Chupacabra, for those of you that don't exactly know what chupacabra means, it translates into goat sucker. That's just one of the local translations. What's the chupacabra? Well, it's not just something that you see on t-shirts printed over and being sold at Alvera Street. You know, popular to contrary belief, according to these t-shirts and merchandise. The chupacabra is a menace in rural areas of Latin America, especially Mexico, and up into even United States into Texas. Now, the chupacabra has had a lot of different, descriptions about it. One of them being kind of looking like a dog, reptilian type creature, who with large, sharp fangs similar to Nosferatu or vampire, that goes around sucking the blood out of livestock, and legend has it it's even attacked humans. Okay, I'm very open-minded. I've seen a lot of different things. Cryptozoology is one of my better areas of expertise, only because I used to catch and collect every single type of reptile out there. Seen a lot of things even in my hometown, which we'll get into in a little while. But the chupacabra is kind of an enigma, and legend in its own right. First of all, like crop circles, things that just pop up out of nowhere, this thing seems to pop up out of nowhere. And there have been a lot of photos and videos popping up on the internet, even being shown on the news, of the carcass of what is supposed to be the chupacabra. Okay. Granted, I have an open mind, but seeing pictures of this chupacabra, on the internet, it looks like a severely dehydrated sort. So, could be some type of, dog. However, okay, pictures do say, the chupacabra hasn't been actually captured. There hasn't been a live capture of a chupacabra. A lot of dead carcasses and such would appear to be chupacabra. A lot of them are even hoaxes. Some of them have some of these sightings or photos or even bodies that have been, materialized, that have popped up of this, this little imp, have actually been shaven, malnourished dogs. They were just kind of doctored up for photo's sake. Locals trying to, make a buck out there. So, trying to sell to National Enquirer and such. Now, I remember when I was a teenager, the whole legend of the chupacabra really popped up in Southern California and Los Angeles and such. All sorts of novelty t-shirts, stickers, and everything could be seen in local flea markets. Alvera Street, a historical area in downtown Los Angeles, depicting this little reptilian creature sucking goats, sucking pretty girls' necks and stuff. It's just, little reptilian vampire. Could it be an extraterrestrial? Could it just be an old wives' tale? Or could somebody have come up with a clever marketing scheme that elaborates and preys on the weak and feeble minds of those who are kind of naive towards things? Who knows? But as we get more information about chupacabra, I'll post it up on the website. I myself would like to sit out there with a goat and see if, I can catch this thing, but why waste a perfectly good goat when we can make, birria and good tacos out of it, right? Anyway, we're going to take another little commercial break. When we return, we'll take some calls. I notice it's kind of late, and maybe many of you already have been, tired out by all the Mother's Day festivities, but phone lines are open, 562-712-3812. Ghost Radio will be back right after this. Okay, and we're back, and the phone lines are open, 562-712-3812. I just got an email from an old classmate of mine who said, Tony, do not dare say my name, but I want to share a story with you. Okay, buddy of mine went to high school with me many years ago in the early 90s to Bell Gardens High School. And prior to that, we were also, attending the same junior high school. Now, Bell Gardens, California is one of these small towns in the outskirts of, the city limits of LA. And it's been around for quite some time. It used to be ranch land way back when. There's a lot of rich history about it, but we won't go into that much detail. And like many cities, landscape and features have changed over the years. Certain part of southern area. First of all, let me tell you something about Bell Gardens. It's a very tiny town, only 2 square miles, and a lot does happen there, and a lot has happened there. There have been some unique, I guess you could say, occurrences over the years throughout history. First of all, a couple of Oscar-winning movies were filmed there, and there's some haunted houses there, very historical homes, a couple of them, which we'll get into later. I don't want to give out too much because I'm working on a documentary about the city and don't want to dish out too much, but I will dish out something that my old pal of mine from high school and junior high can share. And that is the urban legend of Midget Town on the outskirts of Bell Gardens. Okay, like I was saying before, on the southern part of Bell Gardens, there's an old riverbed. It's kind of dried up now. But way back when, over on Foster Bridge Road, when there actually was a Foster Bridge that went across from Bell Gardens to the Treasure Island part of Downey, when it was actually an island as well. Look it up, Google it. There is a remote area in that neighborhood of Treasure Island, which was, coined Midget Town. And of course, like any urban legends, they kind of stem from an exaggerated point of reality. Yes, there were many years ago a family of midgets, or for those of you that are getting antsy and something, hey, PC, little people that lived there for a spell in some considerably smaller homes. Small in comparison to what was on Treasure Island Park in Downey, which still remains today. Now, this riverbed used to get filled up every spring. Full of water. All the local boys would go out there and skip stones and catch frogs and just have a good old time, like could back in the day, before people started being creeps and stuff with little kids. Well, anyway, it's an exaggeration, but my point is, there's a certain part of that riverbed that we were definitely frightened to go to, because we knew that through that drain pipe lied Midget Town. Now, the legend of the midgets, and I'm doing the quotation marks with my fingers, was that they were evil, bloodthirsty, blood-sucking dwarves who loved to prey on passers-by and especially like to swipe up children and eat them. And one of the ways to call them out was to actually be brave enough to go up to the storm drain, stick your head in front of it and yell, "Midget Town, Midget Town, Midget Town." And supposedly some little person, but we'll call them midgets because of the sake of the story, would pop out and snatch you up. Now, if you can catch one, it was supposed to be good luck, like a leprechaun. Now, curious and always trying to prove myself as not being the weak little runt that I used to be. I went up to that drain pipe, yelled out, "Midget Town, Midget Town, Midget Town." Absolutely nothing. That was the first day. Went back a week later. Had to hurry up and go there from before curfew, which was 20 minutes after I got out of school. Mom was strict, but aside from that, went back another day, did the same thing, nothing. Went back the third day. So I was getting irritated. Everybody kept taunting me, peer pressure of being 12. And they yelled, "Midget Town, Midget Town." Silence. And then okay, that freaked me out. And everybody, of course, stood quiet and they're like, do it again, do it again, do it again. Nothing. Didn't see anything, but heard the knocking get louder, louder, louder. Finally, I, just looked over my shoulder towards my friend. I'm like, you know what, guys? I don't know what's going on. I turned around, freaked out. I seen these big, deep-set eyes just glaring at me. Heard the most blood-curdling growl. And this thing's claws, looked like claws, just scraped across the metal pipe, hissing and clawing at me. Now, my eyes, I guess, were deceiving me, because through those 2-inch Coke bottle glasses I used to have as a kid, I saw a monster. Took another look, it was a freaking raccoon. So that was the last time I ever looked for these midgets in Midget Town. This is another example of a urban legend. People usually come up with stories, and they base them on things that they're curious about, or they don't have an understanding about, or hey, they just like to talk a bunch of crap. So this family of small people, little people, midgets, if you will, that lived there for a spell, were always ridiculed and taunted by the locals. So they finally moved out. They didn't live there that very long, so they left their little Riverview home and left behind the legend of Midget Town. When we come back, I have a few more strange facts for you, and I'll also tell you how you can contribute to Ghost Radio. We have a fundraiser campaign going on. More about it when we come back. Alright, that was a quick commercial break. Little 30 seconds to catch my breath, sip a cup of coffee, and adjust my settings on this microphone. So tonight we've spoke a little bit about La Llorona, Chupacabra, and one of my favorite urban legends from my hometown of Bell Gardens, California, the legend of Midget Town. Now I was looking on Google, earlier today I looked on Google, typed in Midget Town, and there were all sorts of accounts of these, miniature towns with bloodthirsty dwarves dwelling upon them, eagerly waiting to, pounce upon little children, take them away and eat them. So, gotta love it. Little people, midgets, whatever, dwarves, they get the short end of the stick, no pun intended. But, hey, they brought us some, they influenced some great, urban legends. Now, another area of curiosity, something I'd like to go into, is the Peterson Mansion, or the Peterson Farmhouse in Bell Gardens. Mrs. Peterson and Mr. Peterson were two of the earliest residents of Bell Gardens when Bell Gardens was a ranch. Their house still stands, and Mrs. Peterson used to be, out in her garden every day watering the plants, grows the citrus trees, all the way until she was in her 90s when she passed away, and, having dementia and Alzheimer's for many years. So there are telltales of at the apparition and the spirit of Mrs. Peterson actually appearing, certain times of the day and night. So next week we'll talk a little more about that. I'm actually going to head over to that house and see what I can find and see what I can bring to you guys. Now, moving on to some business. We only have a few minutes left in tonight's program. I've had a fundraiser. Those of you that don't know, a fundraiser is a fundraising platform on social media, on Facebook, which allows my Facebook friends, followers of the radio show and such, to make some monetary contributions to help keep things going. Now, having an internet radio station, radio show, podcast, call it what you want to, takes some time, takes some effort, and with the right equipment, better equipment and lots of practice, the show can grow, progress, and be much more appealing to our listeners. So if you click onto our on the link on our site, that takes you to our Facebook page. You'll have all the information about the fundraiser, and there's even a fundraiser widget. And you could also donate through one of our PayPal widgets on the page. Every dollar does count. As you can see on our page, I've expressed my gratitude to our donors by placing their name with a little thank you message so everybody can see it. So don't forget, we have a few days left in our fundraiser program to donate. Every penny does count on our listeners, so the more you guys can help, the better. And if you can't afford to help with this show monetarily, you can also just share the link to our site on your Facebook page, because hey, words are worth thousands and possibly millions of dollars. So if that makes any sense. Another very important campaign is the Late Night Horror Film Festival's Indiegogo campaign, which is only a few days left. Now, the Late Night Horror Film Festival is something I do every year, pay for out of my pocket, which aren't very deep, and I work really hard to put this thing together. Now it's in danger of ceasing to exist, so I set up this Indiegogo campaign to raise funds so that way I can expose Downey and the southeast area of Southern California to some great independent filmmakers who make horror films. And these guys are very talented, and they deserve to see their career. And which is what I aim to do, is bring a sense of community amongst independent filmmakers. So for more information on the Late Night Horror Film Festival or its Indiegogo campaign, you can log on to latenighthorrorfilmfest.com. There's only a few days left, and donations are also tax deductible. Well, it's about that time of the night where we're gonna have to say goodbye. And it was a pleasure being on the air with you guys tonight. And a few thoughts on my mind tonight. Close your eyes and drift off into that realm of dream. Just be aware that what may not seem real may in fact be very real indeed. The shadow you see crossing your hallway, that little tug you feel on your blankets at night, might be real, might be a ghost. You decide. It's Ghost Radio. Night, everyone.